I don't want to get too much into the food replication stuff, but he wants us to make our own food. But in this particular segment, he wants us to trust him and his psychological evaluation of the power of yawns, and yet he posts under the name Dole Old Fart. Here's the thing, you can set up, that's fine that he has that username. And he can comment on like Three's Company websites or whatever he wants to do with Dole Old Fart, but when he starts putting forum posts up about yawn and grow rich, trying to help us achieve a greater mental state, don't do it under Dole Old Fart. That is the grossest combination of words. Old Fart implies that it's been sitting around for 3 days. And the fact that it's dull, I don't think that it's boring. I think it's like almost like a dull force, just kind of sitting on you. Ugh. I guess that's not really the definition of dull. But anyways, Dole Old Fart, I'm not going to take advice from you. 20,000 forum posts, I don't even know what to comment on that. How do you really write 20,000 forum posts related to yawning? So, what is the yawn machine? You are the yawn machine, apparently. I've been all over his websites and I couldn't find like a box or some sort of mechanical device called a yawn machine. You are the yawn machine. Now, let's read a little bit off of his website. And again, you're like, Jason, I don't subscribe to your podcast to hear you make fun of people who obviously are having some issues. And I know that. But yawning is the way we counter sleep. A yawn defends against sleep. Now, neither of those are true by any measure at all. Yawning, that's the complete opposite of the form of the yawn. But if he's a backyard scientist, I get it. He's trying to come up with a new reason for why yawning works. We'll give him that. It accompanies the release of unconsciousness, a lessening of the dark energy threatening to overwhelm you, a draining of the engulfing. Now, on his website, he has his version of Franz, where he'll be writing and then an other person jumps in and interrupts his writing. It's super bizarre. This is from yawnmachine.com. It accompanies a release of unconsciousness, a lessening of the dark energy threatening to overwhelm you, a draining of the engulfing. Cut the crap! What's it all about? And be brief, I haven't got all day. So he interrupts himself, and the person who's interrupting him is quite rude. It's not like a frequently asked questions where people are like, what's the yawn machine? How does it work? What have it been? No, it's a guy who interrupts him, and this is the beginning of his website. It's a guy who interrupts him and tells him, cut the crap. Now, he says, the other guy says, what's all about it? Be brief, I haven't got all day. This is his response. This is 3 inches into his webpage. Okay. You're sure you're not underage? Why does that matter, dude? You're talking about yawning. What? Why does it matter? That's creepy. He could say, listen, you have to be over 18 to experience the full power of yawns. That's one way to phrase it. The wrong way to phrase it is, you sure you're not underage? That's what people say on To Catch a Predator. He goes, okay, you're sure you're not underage, not tired, not hungry, not ill, not under the influence, and not mentally on edge? Well, I don't know what any of that has to do with being underage. I really don't know what any of that has to do with yawning, and I'm a little concerned you're asking these questions right off the bat when this is supposed to be safe, and you're asking, you're not hungry, right? Okay, I am. I go eat a sandwich, I come back, I'm like, okay, I'm good. Let's keep going. Here we get into the meat of it. Remember, the idea is to encourage yawns, not suppress them. You don't have to force them, but don't try and stop them coming either. Here we go. Touch stuff. All caps. Guys, you can do this if you want. I'm personally not telling you to. But touch stuff. With your hands, touch the table firmly. Rub your hands together hard. Yawn. Rub your arms, rub your legs, rub your chest. Yawn. Squeeze the sides of the chair. Rub your feet on the carpet, tap your fingernails on the table, stamp your feet, scratch your head, even stretch. This kind of thing. Okay, it's kind of vague. Do whatever makes you yawn right now. But touch stuff. Don't just think about it, but actually touch stuff. And yawn. Yawn, yawn, yawn. This is just residual stress coming off. So, his yawn therapy, it's also called yawn and rub therapy, or yawn and stretch therapy. I knew this was going to happen. Oh, you know. Oh, I read this article a while back, and it said, people who yawn when other people yawn are more empathetic. And people, it's like a gauge. So if somebody yawns and the other person doesn't yawn, it can mean sometimes that they're not a very empathetic person. But if they do repeat the yawn, that means they tend to have more empathy. That's what I've heard. I've also heard a version that if your yawns make other people yawn, that means you're more of a leader. But maybe you're just more of a bunch of empathetic people. I don't know. It seems kind of weird if that works. But we should find out. We should have like a president yawn and see if like 43 million Americans yawn at the same time. But back to this thing. So you stretch and you rub and you yawn, and later on in the site, he says you can also burp and sigh. And it's really just a way, you're basically like moving the energy around in your body. Like right now I'm rubbing my legs. Oh, yawning. Yeah, what a humdinger of a season finale, huh? Everyone's just yawning now. Unless you're not empathetic. Rubbing my knees and rubbing my leg. Now, I can see yawning in a sense being relaxing, but I think it's relaxing because it's making you tired. Now, he has a Paul's robot. He has a robot, so if you're having trouble just following along with me, you can actually download a program onto your computer from this dude. Dull old fart. You can download a program and .exe file onto your computer, and it is Paul's robot. Now, of course, I had to check it out, and of course I did not download it, but he does have an informative YouTube video where he shows how it works, and that's all I needed to know. It's a Word document on one side of your screen and a series of really loud audio messages on the right side of your screen. And the right side of your screen will be like, okay, now yawn. And you're like, I can't yawn. I'm scared because you're yelling at me, computer man. But you type in code, and it'll be like, what are you afraid of right now? Now, it's so funny because, one, the video is 13 minutes long, and it's 13 minutes of a dude yawning. And in the video description, he says, I know the yawning gets a little too much in the video. So he's just yawning the whole time he's doing this video. But when he's talking to Paul's robot, and again, it's just like a set of slideshows that he's named the robot. It doesn't seem like you can interact with it much. But one of the questions was something about a bad memory. Now, he's older than me. I'm 42. He has to be like in his late 50s minimum. He puts down for like a bad memory or something that's bugging him. I don't remember the exact context, but again, it doesn't matter. It had to do with negative emotions. He's older than me. He's in his 50s. Beaten up at school. Okay. I know people have had really bad school experiences, but by the time you hit 55, if that's the biggest complaint you have in your life, that you were beaten up at school, you're doing pretty good. You're doing pretty good. And I was both a bully and the bullied, depending on which grade I was in and which school. We moved almost every 2 years, so I was constantly the new kid. I constantly kind of had to fight my way. I was never the cool kid, but I usually had to like fight my way to not being bullied. And then eventually I would start bullying people. Like, that was just the cycle. Up until about 2 years ago. No, I'm just joking. But, I mean, like, that was you had to prove your worth. I wasn't like a lunch money bully, but I was like a dick to kids who I felt deserved to be a dick. I never like picked on little kids, but I started trouble with other kids. But I was constantly, every time we moved, I had to get back from like, great, I'm going to get bullied now, and I kind of had to like fight my way out of that. And this was back in the 80s, so literally fighting. You're boxing as a teacher smokes a cigarette and watching you guys, and then flicks it away and breaks it up. I know that you guys see that scene in movies. That was fairly common in my childhood. It's not just about yawning. You have to visualize your problems while you're yawning, and you gotta visualize them walking away from you. Now, actually, I just had a good point. If this therapy works so good, why is he still upset about something that happened 40 years ago? Or more. But anyways, you rub your body, you yawn, and you imagine your bad feelings go away. That can work in a sense. I remember I used to have this thing, this episode is becoming oddly personal. I used to have this thing that whenever I was, suffered some sort of heartbreak or some sort of loss, I would imagine myself, in my head, I would imagine myself putting all those memories in a box and closing the box. And then the box folding basically into nothingness. The box kept folding upon itself until I couldn't see it anymore. And it was like all my worries went away. Like if a girl broke my heart, I would take her birthday and her name and pictures of her in my head and memories, and I'd put them in this box and I'd seal it, and then I'd watch it go doop, 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 doop. Just shrink into nothingness. That was the way I dealt with it. It's probably not a good way to deal with it, because all those emotions are still in there somewhere, but I just forget. I remember I always knew I was getting over a girl when I forgot her middle name. That was hard. Eventually, the first thing I would do is I would just start. Sometimes I would imagine their. This is a deeply personal episode. Sometimes I would imagine a girl's face, and I would imagine pixels going out one by one until it was black. Both of those really help, actually. Both of those really help me. Maybe not in the long term. I feel like I'm doing good. I don't remember any of those girls. But yeah, I just would blank it out. I'd visualize it leaving. So I get where he's coming from. The whole yawning stuff, though, is just... It just doesn't make sense to me. If anything, it's the meditation already makes you fall asleep, and now you want me to yawn while I'm meditating? I'm gonna fall asleep before I get anything done. He also has ways you can get rid of bad negative feelings about people, specific ways, because the yawn therapy is just kind of an overall, I hate my job. And then you see your job leaving you. Actually, you're leaving your job because they fired you because you were yawning all day. And you work at a call center. Anyways, so you can do it for particular people or you can do it for places. So you probably know what's coming with the places, but he gives this step-by-step process for people relief. Here's people relief. Step 1. In a session, he wrote in session, but whatever. In a session, make a written list of people or groups who you feel have been hostile to you, or are hostile to you right now. When I first read that, I was like, so basically, racists, right? I mean, I can understand people having issues with other people, but generally when people have issues with other groups, it's either I don't like the government, I don't like the police, or I don't like this ethnic group or religion. So, I mean, unless a bunch of, racist dudes are just sitting around going, oh, and just yawning away their feelings of hatred, there's not many groups. He has a few that he's listed, but there's not many groups that I'm like, oh man, I really hate the IRS, Anyways, make a written list of, don't do this, guys, because this is going to put you on a government watch list. Don't make a list of people or groups who have been hostile to you, and definitely don't do his next step. As you write down the names, put 1, 2, or 3 crosses next to the name. Don't do this, depending on the level of hostility or bad feeling. This is a serial killer list. This is a school shooting checklist. Do not do this under any circumstances. Do not follow this guy's advice. This is his sample list. No joke. This is what he wrote down as a sample list. First name, Mary. 3 X's. Most likely generic. That's most likely a generic name. Mary's a generic name. James. 2 X's. Again, probably just a sample generic name. His third entry down on his list of things that have been hostile to him, the groups of people who've been hostile to him or people. The first 2 were most likely just examples, but they may be real people. He may really have a problem with Mary and kind of a problem with James. But again, you're making this list for people to read and to look at and go, yes, I want to do this therapy. I trust you, Paul Adams. He has Mary, 3 X's. He has James, 2 X's. The third one, you'll never guess what it is, ever. That demon that no one will believe me about. 2 X's.